Welcome to the Ultimate Sports Podcast. The third and final guest of the night is the host of the Doug Siravo Show and has a new podcast called Devils on the Road. And I am talking about Doug Siravo. How are you doing on this night?
I'm doing well. Talking to you, walking around looking at some Christmas decorations. So it's a good night.
Yeah, it is a good night. And what was a good day for Mets fans yesterday, as it was reported by Ken Rosenthal that Jeff and Fred Wilpon are selling pretty much their stake in the team to somebody who already owned 4% of the team in Steve Cohen, and he's going to get 80% of the team. What did you make of that news yesterday?
I mean, what took them so long? I think it's a good move for the Mets moving forward.
Absolutely. You're right. What took so long? This one kind of came out of nowhere, wouldn't you say?
Yeah, I don't think we expected to hear this anytime soon, but it looks like they're deciding to sell.
Yeah, and this is really getting people excited, and then this guy's apparently a billionaire, and he's going to be a big spender, and the Mets are going to act like a big market team, and their fan base will be very, very happy about that. And I'm sure people in your household were very pleased to hear that news yesterday.
Yes, they were, because this is a team that doesn't spend, and you look at the Yankees, they spend, and the Mets don't, so.
Yeah, exactly. That's what it comes down to. The Yankees normally do spend, although they haven't really spent much over the last few years, although it may happen this winter. We'll get into that, but the Mets really, that is a step in the right direction, and I'm quite happy for Mets fans because they really are... I understand what it's like to have a bad owner running your team. And speaking of the Mets, they lost a Met yesterday. Zach Wheeler signed a 5-year, $113 million contract with the division rival Philadelphia Phillies. Do you think the Phillies overpaid for Zach Wheeler?
I mean, I would say they did. 5 years, $100 million. He hasn't really proven himself career-wise, but he has the last 2 years, but for someone who missed 2 seasons due to injury, I wouldn't want to take the chance and pay $20 million a year for.
Exactly. A lot of injury issues in the past, some inconsistent play, and then Philly overpays him because he had a great finish to last season, and he was actually good at points last year as well. Another big name free agent pitcher on the market is Garrett Cole. And lately there's been a lot of rumors linking him with the Yankees, and Brian Cashman, Aaron Boone, new pitching coach Matt Blake, and guest Andy Pettit flew out to California to meet with Garrett Cole and Steven Strasburg as well. But it seems like they're more interested in Garrett Cole than Steven Strasburg. What do you think are the chances that the Yankees actually pull this off?
I'm going 80 to 20%.
Wow.
80 yes, 20 no.
80-20 that they do pull it off?
Yes.
Wow, I'm not as confident as you are. I wish I was. I would say 50-50, but maybe 40-60, and the 60% meaning the field. But I do think it's encouraging that they flew out there, and they're obviously more serious about this than they were about Patrick Corbin last year. But quite frankly, Garrett Cole's a better pitcher than Patrick Corbin, and they really know that they need like that ace type of pitcher to get them over the top. So I have to applaud the Yankees for trying their butts off.
The reason why I think that is because I think if they go down to the Yankees and the Angels, and if he wants to win, the Yankees are his best option. And after last year not pitching Game 7, I think he wants that chance to play the Astros in the playoffs and knock them out.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that factor in there, obviously pitching against the Astros in the postseason and wanting to win. So obviously those two things favor the Yankees. And I think the Dodgers are a more serious threat to sign Cole than the Angels, only because the Dodgers are closer to winning than the Los Angeles Angels. And I think that it's either going to come down to the Yankees the Dodgers are a random mystery team that nobody's thinking of, like the Texas Rangers or maybe the Phillies, or a team that's like spending crazy money trying to win, and they just convince Garrett Cole to come. So you never know. There's always that random mystery team. Don't forget, last year no one had the Padres signing Manny Machado, and they signed Manny Machado. Everyone thought it was either going to be White Sox, Phillies, or Yankees, and he ends up going to the San Diego Padres of all teams. What is a move that you'd like to see your beloved Tampa Bay Rays make this offseason?
I would love to see another bat, and if Garcia leaves in free agency, I would like to see the Rays go after Edwin Encarnacion.
Yes, I think that would be an excellent fit. I actually predicted on my offseason predictions podcast that he would land with the Rays. They need like that DH type of bat, and he'd be perfect there. He knows the AL East. He dominates AL East pitching, and I think that he would just be like the perfect addition to the Tampa Bay Rays lineup. What is your bold prediction for the winter meetings?
My bold predictions, if there's a team that people should not sleep on to get a star, I think it could be the Chicago White Sox taking Steven Strasburg away from the Washington Nationals.
That's a good call because they missed out on Wheeler and they missed out on Machado last year. And that team is another team that wants to win. And it's funny, they think that part of them wants to like take over Chicago again because the Cubs look like they're all of a sudden rebuilding. There's rumors about their star players being available for trade. So that's not crazy to say that the White Sox will sign a star free agent. That's pretty good. If I had to make one, I'm going to say that there will be 3 superstar players traded at the winter meetings. And I think one of them is Mookie Betts.
I think Chris Bryant is on the move.
That's another one that's included in this prediction. The third one is Francisco Lindor of the Indians. I think that those 3
are very likely.
Yes, those are the 3 I have being traded at the winter meetings. If not the winter meetings, then at some point in the offseason. Let's switch over to the National Hockey League where your beloved New Jersey Devils fired head coach John Hines 2 days ago. Do you think this move was overdue? Because I do.
Yeah, I think they were late with it.
Yeah, I thought they were late too.
The season turned around on opening night when they had a 4-0 lead and lost 5-4 to the Winnipeg Jets.
I remember that game. They had a 4-0 lead, blew it to the Jets. And I think Hines would have been fired earlier in the season had they lost that nationally televised game against the Rangers. I think they beat the Rangers 5-2. And that was the game where I think they had like an assistant general manager or something with the coaching staff that night or something. And I remember it was a nationally televised NBCSN game. Devils beat the Rangers. And I thought that had they lost to the Rangers in that game, that would have been it for John Hines. But he ended up saving his job for a couple months there and ended up getting fired in result of it. And speaking of the Devils, their star player Taylor Hall is in the last year of his contract. What are the chances you think that they move Taylor Hall at the trade deadline?
I think it all depends on what they can get back for him and where he feels is comfortable for him. I know the players I see there. The one thing I've just noticed with Taylor Hall is he's not the type of guy to stay after the game, sign autographs for fans. But the one thing I do notice is that he's been stopping a lot lately. So I wonder if that's a sign that he knows that he may be traded. And if the Devils do trade him, they have to get back at least a first-round draft pick and a top prospect that is ready to play in the National Hockey League, whether it's a forward or a defenseman. And the one defenseman I'm looking at is Colorado's Bowen Byram.
That's interesting. If they send Taylor Hall to Colorado, that team all of a sudden becomes loaded. He would be on their second line. Is Nazem Kadri their second line center, if I'm not mistaken?
I
Or is
think
it
so.
Tyson Yost?
I think it's McKinnon. Yeah, McKinnon, Jost, and Kadri.
Yes. Then he'd be playing with Tyson Yost and the line behind that great line of Gabriel Landeskog and McKinnon, that line, and then he'd be playing beneath them. Like, that's just an insane team if they're able to pull off that acquisition. And I was thinking of other Taylor Hall possible destinations the other day while I was discussing the Heinz firing on my daily podcast. And another interesting team to me is the St. Louis Blues. They obviously lost Vladimir Tarasenko for a significant period of time due to injury. They've been fine without him, but just imagine Taylor Hall on that team.
Yeah, and they're on a hot streak right now. I think they're 18-5-3, and one of the best records in the National Hockey League.
Yeah, they've been playing well without Tarasenko. They have a good team. It's not that Tarasenko is a one-man wrecking crew. Like, that's a very good team. Another interesting Taylor Hall fit, in my opinion, and by the way, I think they'll probably trade him to the Western Conference rather than the Eastern Conference, is the Nashville Predators.
Yeah, that's interesting. But I don't think Nashville would want to take on his salary. So, I mean, he will be a free agent next year anyway, so.
But yeah, I'm trying to think of teams that are, like, in win-now mode. I know the Blues stand out, although they won the Cup last year. You mentioned Colorado. That's a good call. Dallas is an interesting possible Taylor Hall team. Him being on the same line potentially as Sagan and Ben. Like, imagine that.
Hall, Sagan, Ben would be a good line.
That would be a good line. Vegas is loaded offensively, so I don't see them making a Taylor Hall type of move. Another interesting team is San Jose. They really have turned their season around a little bit. I wonder if they would tip their toe into the sweepstakes. What do you make of the Sharks as a fit?
I think the Sharks could be a good fit, and I'd take a few first-round picks for them this year and next year, and then maybe a conditional second-round pick if they win the Stanley Cup or go to the conference finals.
Yeah, so it should be very, very interesting to see if the Devils decide to trade him and what team. What do you make of the Mike Babcock firing from Toronto and all this stuff that's come out about Babcock and just kind of things that he's done with the Red Wings and the Maple Leafs that have gotten released after his firing with the Leafs?
I mean, I'm not surprised. When you when I watched him in the Cup final against the Devils in 2003 and that Stanley Cup DVD film, he had his ways with the Anaheim Mighty Ducks. So I'm not really surprised of these reports. And I think as we move on, you'll see these type of coaches not working out with the younger players of today's generation.
Yeah, and then obviously a different story was Bill Peters getting let go by the Flames for an incident he did in the past. And it's just crazy with all these trends in hockey and how people are losing their jobs because of past instances. And then Mark Crawford with the Blackhawks, the assistant there, is on leave because of an incident he had. So it's just a strange but sad state in hockey right now with all these random coaches getting let go or being placed on leave because of past instances. The New York Islanders got off to a hot start, although they did lose their latest game against the Canadiens in Montreal. What do you make of the Islanders' hot start?
I think they are poised to have a good player from this year. They're playing good hockey. Barry Trotz is a great coach, as you saw what he brought the Washington Capitals to. They were able to get over that hump. And with Tavares leaving, he was able to get them to play their best hockey despite not having that caliber superstar player.
Yeah, I think the Islanders are a trade away from being in that conversation with Boston and Washington. I really do. I think this Islanders team's for real. I'm a big Trotz fan. I thought they were going to fall back a little bit, but I obviously was wrong about the Islanders and probably shouldn't doubt Barry Trotz going forward. But I really think that they should pull off a trade. I don't think they're going to step their foot in the Taylor Hall sweepstakes only because I don't see New Jersey trading with a division rival. But maybe somebody on like a team that's in the Western Conference that's like underachieving, that maybe will put a player out on the trade block. I can't really think of a good call that could be on the move this year. Like maybe one of those Anaheim veterans, maybe if they aren't that great at the deadline, or maybe like a Kings player potentially. Do you think any of those guys would be available, like Kopitar or Getzlaff?
I mean, I can, but they have a big contract.
That's
and
true.
I don't think teams want to take on that salary.
Yeah,
well,
those
I
are.
can see someone like Adam Henrique being moved. He's a good depth centerman. Maybe the Islanders try to go after him. But that's one of the guys I could see being moved.
Yeah, that's a good call, Adam Henrique. I'll remember that going to the deadline. Adam Henrique Islanders. That would be a really good depth piece because I know they have Derek Brassard there as a depth piece as well, and he obviously has had some big playoff moments in his career as well. Let's switch over to the NFL before we go. What do you make of Daniel Jones' ankle injury and the fact that Eli Manning is starting in all likelihood on Monday night against the Eagles?
I think it's good that we saw what happened to Daniel Jones. You want to take precaution and not injure it any worse. And I think realistically, we all know that this is probably Eli's last year. I think he's going to hang them up at the end of the year. So it's good that he gets to go out playing a few games and not going out because dumb Pat Shermer decided to bench him after 2 games.
Yeah, so like part of me thinks it's a blessing in disguise because maybe Jones maybe he injured that ankle a little while ago. It just gotten worse in that Packers game after he tripped in the snow. And hopefully Jones gets better soon, and we want him to be healthy for 2020, hopefully with a better coach and a better offensive line. And like you said, a good send-off for Eli Manning after being benched after 2 games, which I actually agreed with the decision to bench Eli because I personally didn't think the Giants were a good team, and why draft Daniel Jones, number 6 overall, to sit him on the bench the whole season. So like I actually agree with the benching, but at the same time, I think it's a kind of cool thing that we get to have a farewell tour for Eli Manning at the end of the season here. Speaking of Pat Shermer, I think he's getting fired at the end of the season. I'm sure you do too. Who would you like to see as a possible replacement for Pat Shermer?
I mean, now that he's available, I would give a shot to Ron Rivera. He's been to the playoffs. They've had a decent year this year, the Panthers. But obviously in that deep NFC, it's not good enough. So I think Ron Rivera could be a candidate. Maybe someone from college who's available. Maybe you could go after Jim Harbaugh or the guy from Dale. I think his name's Matt Rule.
Matt Rule, yep.
So I think there's a lot of options out there, but it doesn't start with Shermer being fired. We didn't sign Odell to trade him. Dave Gettleman has to go too.
But yeah, I think that there's a chance Gettleman goes. Because did you see that interview with Bruce Beck and Steve Tisch?
Yes, I did.
That does not bode well for Gettleman either. As much as it doesn't bode well for Shermer, I don't think that bodes well for Gettleman either. The fact that he said that John Mara and I have to be honest with assessment, and I think there's a chance Gettleman's gone. But the case for Ron Rivera to be our head coach is the Gettleman staying. I think it's more likely that they get Rivera if Gettleman stays, and I agree with you on Rivera. Rivera's a good coach. I think that time had run its course in Carolina, and they wanted to go in a different direction, similar to the Yankees with Joe Girardi, and you see this around sports a lot with teams that have had successful coaches or managers in sports. And I think that Rivera is somebody that gets a lot out of his teams, as you saw in Carolina. He helped develop Cam Newton into a good quarterback, so I certainly would take a chance with Ron Rivera. And I think a lot of teams will try to tuck themselves into Ron Rivera. I think he's a better coach than given credit for, absolutely. But if they do fire Gettleman, I think it's less likely that Rivera comes because obviously Gettleman was the general manager with the Panthers, and they obviously have that tie, those two. So we'll see. And I actually am intrigued by Matt Rule of Baylor because he turned Temple into a good program in the AAC, and then he turned Baylor into a contender this year as well. So it should be interesting to see which direction the Giants go. Before the football season, you predicted that the Baltimore Ravens were going to win the AFC North Division. I thought that they were going to regress, and I thought that the Browns and the Steelers were going to be good. And I certainly did not see this Lamar Jackson MVP push coming, and I have to give you props for that, for calling the Ravens to win the AFC North. But did you think they were going to be 10-2 good? And did you think that Lamar Jackson was going to be an MVP candidate?
No, realistically, I thought they were going to win this division at 9-7, 10-6.
10-6 would have been realistic.
I didn't think the Steelers would have gone off to that rough start. I believe the Browns would have not been consistent. The Bengals, I had nothing to worry about. I knew they would be awful.
Yeah.
But I didn't think they would steamroll every opponent they play. And Lamar Jackson, I saw him being good, but I didn't see him being this good. But then again, a lot of teams haven't figured him out yet. And I think in the future, a lot of teams will be able to stop him. But this year, you got to give him a lot of credit.
Absolutely. He's just been outstanding, and I certainly think that he will end up winning the MVP award when it's all said and done. There was a report out today that Odell Beckham Jr. wants out of Cleveland, apparently. What do you make of that?
I think the guy's a distraction. And I think no matter where he's at, he won't be satisfied. But then again, if I was playing in Cleveland, I wouldn't be satisfied either with all the hype. And now here we are sitting at 5-7 when all the media said was this is a team that can go to the Super Bowl. So I can understand his frustration. A guy like Beckham would want to make it about him, and I think that's what he's trying to make it about him, trying to say that he's good and that the Browns don't need him.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see what happens here. And part of me is not that surprised that he isn't happy, and I think it's because of the losing, not because it's Cleveland. There's arguments out there it's because of Cleveland. I personally think it's because of the losing, because I think that he thought that he was going to a Super Bowl contender, and he thought that Baker Mayfield was this MVP quarterback. But no, he is stuck on another dumpster fire team, and his dramas kind of affected the team, in my opinion, a little bit. What team has surprised you the most this season with their success in the NFL?
A team that surprised me the most. There's a lot of teams out there. Honestly, I would have to say it's Seattle Seahawks.
That's a good call.
I remember when our buddy Jeff predicted it, and then I went on Twitter asking if he lost it because I didn't think Seattle would be this good. Because you still had the Rams, and I thought the Niners would come back. So Seattle definitely surprised me because I believe I had them missing the playoffs.
Yeah, I didn't have Seattle in the playoffs either, but the team that surprised me the most is their division rival 49ers. I did not expect them to be this good. I had the Seahawks second in the division and the 49ers third, And I thought that the Niners would be like 6-10, 7-9 type of team and not battling for a first round bye in the playoffs. So that's incredible to me. Jimmy Garoppolo really has been pretty solid, but they've been led by their defense, led by Rookie of the Year favorite Nick Bosa. So I'm going to say the 49ers have been my biggest surprise, with an honorable mention to the Buffalo Bills, who I don't think anybody expected to be 9-3 at this point of the season, and one game back of the New England Patriots. What do you make of the Bills?
I think they're the future of the AFC East.
Right now, it looks like it.
Well, the Patriots will always have a good system as long as Belichick is there. So, and I think whoever the next quarterback is can succeed. But I think the Bills are going to be on top of that AFC East for many years to come. Josh Allen is a great quarterback. McDermott is a good coach. And to be at 9-3 and only a half game out of that division, I would not be surprised if they somehow find a way to win it.
Yeah. I won't be that surprised if they find a way to win the division, too. The case is that the Patriots lose the Kansas City, the Bills win out, and there you go. And I just don't see that happening, really. I think that the Bills have a couple tough games on their schedule, although I do think that they have a good chance to beat the Ravens on Sunday. That's a pretty hot take, considering how well the Ravens have been playing this season. Before we go quickly, who do you have winning tonight's game between the Cowboys and the Bears?
Both teams are inconsistent, but I think if there's a team that's hungrier and wants it more and is tired of hearing all the talk from the head coach, the GM, the media, I'm going with the Dallas Cowboys tonight.
I agree with you.
They have a lot to prove.
A lot to prove. The Bears have a lot to prove, too. They kind of have gotten back into this playoff mix, but I think the Cowboys are under way more pressure. I think that they're the team in the NFL that's facing the most pressure right now because of Jason Garrett's job security, because Jerry Jones has been very outspoken lately, and because that division isn't even locked up yet for them. So pressure's on. They got to win this game. I think they will win, but I think it'll be a close game. And I think a good bet tonight for the game, Doug, is the under 43 on whether it's FanDuel or DraftKings, unless it's gone up or down. So what do you make of the under bet by me?
Yeah, I see it going. I see it being under. Both teams are inconsistent. It's not like the Cowboys are steamrolling every team they play. The Bears, you don't know what you're going to get. So I could see this being like a 21 or even like a 19-17 final score.
I wrote down 20-17 as my final score. Cowboys win on a field goal by Brett Maher. And I could totally see this playing out where it's the Bears that have the ball with 2 minutes to go, and Mitch Trubisky throws a pick to Byron Jones at their own 35-yard line, and then Cowboys take a couple knees, and then they kick the field goal there at the end for the win. I could just totally see that playing out, and then Bears Twitter will freak out and kill Trubisky, and then our friends on Facebook that are Cowboys fans will be going nuts saying, "How about them Cowboys?" I could just totally see that playing out, right?
Yep, and you know the NFC East is so bad where if the Giants were like 4-8, they could still have a shot.
Yeah.
That's how bad this division was this year.
Yeah, maybe if some of those closer games that the Giants had went our way, they'd still be in the conversation. And obviously, Pat Shurmur was obviously to blame for some of those, and so have been the defense. And then there's been a couple close calls with them. And even conversely, you can make a case that they should be 1-11 because the Bucs missed that kick at the end of the game that cost them that game. And had the Bucs made that kick, not only the Giants be 1-11, probably the Bucs would be kind of like where the Bears are right now at 500. And then the Bucs had another weird, crazy loss that they shouldn't have lost either. I just can't think of what it was in the top of my head. And that's another storyline for another day, the future of Jameis Winston. So there's a lot of crazy what ifs in the NFL this year, especially.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of guys on the market. You look at Cam Newton, if Panthers want to move on, Winston. Then you have guys like Rivers that could retire. So it's going to be a very interesting year in football next year.
Yeah, 2020, I can't wait for that offseason. Rivers is a possible retirement candidate. Obviously, retirement candidates are led by Eli Manning and Tom Brady. Rivers is certainly a candidate. I don't think Breeze wants to retire. He's still playing at a high level, but you never know with him either. So we'll have you on again once the new year rolls around, and I hope you have a very, very happy holidays.
Thank you, Matt. Happy holidays.
Alrighty.